Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In the West Bank and Jerusalem, 7 people, 4 Palestinians and 3 Israelis, have been killed amidst a wave of violence and protests over Israel's refusal to remove metal detectors from the Holy Al-Aqsa Mosque. On Friday, an Israeli settler killed 18-year-old Mohammed Sharaf, and Israeli soldiers killed 17-year-old Mohammed Khalaf and 20-year-old Mohammed Ghanem. On Saturday, an Israeli soldier killed 21-year-old Yusuf Abbas Kushner. About 400 more Palestinians were wounded as Israeli troops opened fire against protesters with live bullets and tear gas. Meanwhile, Friday night, a Palestinian teenager killed a man and his 2 adult children in their home in an Israeli-only settlement in the West Bank. The 3 victims, whose names have not been released, were sitting down to Shabbos dinner when they were stabbed to death Friday night. This is Abed al-Jalil al-Abad, the father of the Palestinian teenager who killed the 3 Israelis.
I have no idea about what happened, and I'm against any attack. Our children are young, and the occupation is responsible for the attack, not my son. The occupation caused this attack after pressing on Al-Aqsa Mosque.
On Sunday, the violence appeared to spread to the Israeli embassy in Jordan, where an Israeli security officer killed 2 Jordanians after one stabbed him. Israel has deployed more troops to the occupied West Bank amidst the growing protests. The UN Security Council is set to convene an emergency meeting over the violence today. In Yemen, Oxfam is warning the spiraling cholera outbreak could become, quote, the largest ever recorded in any country in a single year since records began, unquote. The World Health Organization says as many as 5,000 Yemenis are being infected every day and that the disease will only spread further as the rainy season begins. The cholera outbreak comes as more than 2 years of U.S.-backed Saudi-led bombing in Yemen has devastated the country's health, water, and sanitation systems. This is UN Human Rights Agency spokesperson Rupert Colville.
The fighting hugely exacerbating the ability to stop this epidemic of cholera, and also the kind of disintegration of the health system in Yemen as a result of the conflict at a time of cholera is an absolutely lethal combination.
We'll go to Sana'a, Yemen, for more on the cholera epidemic and the U.S.-backed bombing campaign later in the broadcast. In the United States and Texas, at least 9 people have died from heat exposure and asphyxiation after they and 30 others were crammed into the back of a sweltering tractor-trailer as part of their journey to enter the United States from Mexico when the group of migrants were discovered in a Walmart parking lot in San Antonio. 8 men were already dead. 1 more man died later in the hospital. Authorities say they're investigating it as a human trafficking case. Survivors say as many as 100 people were sandwiched into the back of the truck at times during the deadly journey. This is Fire Chief Charles Hood.
Extricating patients out of the back of a semi-truck. The air conditioning was not working, so everyone was removed. During that time, we had 8 patients that were deceased. We had another 20 patients that were either in extremely critical condition or very serious condition, and they've been transported to a number of hospitals.
Reuters is reporting the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, or ICE, is planning to launch a series of nationwide raids this week, targeting undocumented teenagers for deportation. According to an internal ICE memo, the raids will target 16- and 17-year-olds who are accused of having ties to gangs. The criteria ICE is using to assess possible gang affiliation includes whether teenagers have tattoos, wear clothing typical of a gang, or even spend time in an area that's known to have gangs. The National Immigration Law Center in Los Angeles has criticized law enforcement's methods, saying, quote, "We have seen babies labeled as potential gang members," unquote. On Capitol Hill, President Trump's son-in-law, senior advisor Jared Kushner, is set to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee today in a closed-door session about Trump's ties to Russia. Ahead of today's testimony, Kushner released an 11-page statement saying he had 4 separate meetings with Russians during the 2016 campaign and transition period, 2 meetings with the Russian ambassador, 1 with the head of a Russian state-owned bank, and 1 with the Russian lawyer, promising damaging information on Hillary Clinton. On Friday, Kushner separately released new information investigation about as many as 70 investments and assets he failed to disclose in previous filings. His wife, Trump's daughter and senior advisor Ivanka Trump, also disclosed she received up to $5 million from a trust that holds her Ivanka-branded clothing and fashion label, even as she joined the White House and promised to distance herself from her fashion label. All this comes as President Trump said Saturday he has the complete power to issue pardons, including for himself or for his family members. In more news from Capitol Hill, Wall Street financier Anthony Scaramucci has become President Trump's new communications director, sparking the resignation of White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Scaramucci, who's nicknamed the Mooch, has been a vocal critic of Trump in the past and disagrees with a slew of Trump's policies. He has, for example, issued support for gun control, the end of the death penalty, action to mitigate climate change, and pro-choice policies. He's also called Trump a hack, an anti-American.
That's another hack politician.
You call Donald Trump a hack?
He's a hack politician. He's probably going to make Elizabeth Warren his vice presidential nominee with comments like that.
Do you think he's a
It's anti-American. It's very, very divisive.
You think Donald's a plant?
And I'll tell you who he's going to be president of. You can tell Donald I said this, the Queens County Bullies Association. You got to cut it out now and stop all this crazy rhetoric spinning everybody's heads around.
That was Anthony Scaramucci, Trump's new communications director, speaking on Fox Business Network in August 2015. After Sean Spicer's resignation Friday, Sarah Huckabee Sanders will serve as press secretary. The Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough has determined some parts of the Republican health care bill, including the plan to defund Planned Parenthood for a year, violate a 1985 law known as the Byrd Rule, which means these provisions cannot pass the Senate without a full 60 votes. Republicans currently hold 52 seats in the Senate. President Trump is continuing to demand Republicans pass a plan to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, despite the fact that Senate Republicans have now failed to pass multiple versions of the bill because of dissent within their own party. Last night, Trump tweeted, "If Republicans don't repeal and replace the disastrous Obamacare, the repercussions will be far greater than any of them understand!" Exclamation point. In Afghanistan, a Taliban suicide bomb attack has killed at least 35 people in the capital, Kabul. The majority of the victims were government workers with the Afghan Ministry of Mines and Petroleum. A Taliban spokesman said the target of the attack were members of the Afghan intelligence agency. In Poland, the president says he'll veto controversial judicial reforms after days of massive protests against the proposals, which opponents said would have ended the separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary. The proposed measures would have allowed the Polish parliament to appoint Supreme Court judges. The European Union had threatened to bring sanctions over the measures. In Germany, thousands of people marched Saturday in Berlin for the Christopher Street Day Parade for LGBT rights. The annual march commemorates the 1969 Stonewall riot in New York City, when transgender people of color fought back against a police raid of Manhattan's Stonewall Inn, launching the modern-day gay and lesbian movement. Back in the United States, in Minneapolis, Police Chief Janie Harto has resigned amidst growing protests over the police killing of the unarmed Australian woman, Justine Rischik. Many residents are now calling for the resignation of the mayor, Betsy Hodges, saying the killing of Rischik, which came after she called 911 twice to report a possible sexual assault near her home, shows an institutional problem with the Minneapolis police. This is one of the protesters.
The former chief wasn't doing her job, but we understand it's beyond the chief, that the problem is institutional. That's right. If it was not institutional, then those cameras would have been, those body cameras would have been on the police the other day.
Justine Rischik was shot dead by police officer Mohammed Noor, who was responding to emergency calls as Rischik approached his police cruiser in her pajamas. Noor was sitting in the passenger side. He shot across his partner, who was in the driver's seat, and shot Rischik through the abdomen, through her abdomen, through the window. We'll go to Minneapolis for more on the growing protests after headlines. In Tennessee, a judge is under fire after it was revealed he was offering to shorten prison sentences for people who agreed to get sterilized. In May, Judge Sam Benningfield issued an order saying any prisoners who agreed to undergo a vasectomy or receive long-term contraceptive implants would receive 30 days of credit off their sentences. The ACLU says the practice is unconstitutional, saying, quote, "Such a choice violates the fundamental fundamental constitutional right to reproductive autonomy and bodily integrity by interfering with the intimate decision of whether and when to have a child, imposing an intrusive medical procedure on individuals who are not in a position to reject it, the ACLU said. And in Connecticut, an undocumented mother has taken sanctuary in a Pentecostal church in New Haven in order to avoid deportation to Guatemala. Nuri Chavarria is the mother of 4 children who's been in the United States for almost a quarter of a century, for 24 years. She's been attending regular check-ins with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, since 2011. But at her most recent check-in this spring, she was ordered to leave the country by July 20th. This is Nuri Chavarria and her daughter, Haley, speaking at a news conference outside the church Thursday.
My mother, Nuri Chavarria, is someone I love more than anyone in the world. She's not a criminal.
I was in shock. I can't believe it. I told him I'm not a criminal. I'm a mother. With 4 children.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.